Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Bloomberg Businessweek with Kari Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
In August, the World Health Organization declared an Mpox global health emergency, as one strain of the virus has now killed over 575 people in the Democratic Republic of Congo and infected 30 times more. New cases have recently appeared now in Europe and Asia. We're joined now by Kari, Debbink, Associate Professor in the Department of Molecular Microbiology and Immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And a quick disclaimer, the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. So, Kari, what do Americans need to know about the threat of Mpox?
So I think the first thing that's really important for the general public to understand is that right now our risk is very low. We have not seen any cases of the specific type of Mpox that the public health emergency has been activated for. However, that health emergency went out to make sure that the governments and public health agencies are gearing up and getting ready in case we do see something, and also helping countries where there are cases combat it there so that it doesn't spread further. So for the general public right now, the risk is very low, but we also are prepared.
How are we prepared?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think first I want to just give a background on Mpox as far as how it's defined. So there's actually two different big groups of Mpox. There's clade 1 and clade 2. And in 2022, there was a global outbreak of clade 2, including cases here in the United States, and there are still cases of the clade 2 Mpox here in the US. However, this specific public health emergency is actually geared towards one of the clade 1 virus, and the reason for that being it's spreading to places it hasn't spread, it's spreading in ways it hasn't spread, and historically this has been a type of Mpox that causes more severe disease and higher death rates, and so that's why people are concerned. Now, because in 2022 we had that outbreak of the clade 2 virus, our public health agencies and health infrastructure really stepped up to make sure that we're able to do really good surveillance for Mpox. So we do like wastewater testing, and people are doing clinical sample testing. We're also able to detect it in clinical cases. So there's a test that can tell whether or not somebody has Mpox versus another type of virus. And we also have vaccines available for people in high-risk groups. So our health infrastructure really in the United States is set up well in case we do end up seeing clade 1 viruses here.
What are the symptoms of Mpox, and then what are the treatments then if someone does contract it?
So the symptoms of Mpox, they start out like typical flu symptoms, so fever, swollen lymph nodes, headache. Those are some of the general symptoms that people can have. But the characteristic symptom of Mpox, it's a pox virus, so it causes blisters. And so you end up with a rash that starts off as a flat rash. It then erupts into blisters that are fluid-filled. Those burst and scab over, and then it heals. So that's the characteristic. When people think of Mpox, they're thinking usually of that rash and those blisters. So those are the main symptoms. Usually people recover. In severe cases, people might have severe respiratory illness or neurological symptoms, and in rare cases, people die from Mpox, but the majority of people do recover. As far as treatments go, there are no licensed specific antivirals specifically for Mpox. However, there have been cases where people are using antivirals that have been approved for other viral infections to try to treat it. Usually this is in severe cases. For most people that don't end up with a really severe case, it's mostly treating the symptoms, making sure that their pain is managed, that they're not getting secondary infections like from a bacteria that invades like the wounds from the blisters, things like that.
Kari, who's most at risk for Mpox, and should these people be getting vaccinated?
So traditionally, for clade 1 viruses that were, they're traditionally found in Central Africa. It's usually children there that are the ones that are getting it the most, followed by people with immune deficiencies. So those are like the two highest risk group: children and people with immune deficiencies. Pregnant women are also at a greater risk of to themselves and to the developing fetus or the baby. Here in the United States, in the 2002 outbreak, it was mostly seen in populations of men having sex with men. So it really just depends on the particular location and the main transmission route in a certain area, who might be the most at risk of getting it. But as far as severe infections and death, it's definitely children and people who are already immunocompromised.
So are most children getting a vaccine that would protect against this?
No, in the United States, children are not being vaccinated right now. In the United States, again, we haven't seen any clade 1 viruses at this point. So the vaccinations that have been given into this point have been for the 2002 outbreak of that clade 2 virus. And the CDC has very specific recommendations for who gets that vaccine. It's really only recommended for specific groups that are high risk of being exposed.
In terms of like a worry list right now, where should we be? Where should this be on our list of things to worry about? I have a list.
You have a list. Okay, we'll put this one low.
Okay, thank you.
And there's a couple reasons for that. So I know that it sounds really scary when people hear like public health emergency of international concern, right? But that's the WHO's designation. But that's really not meant to be for the average person in the public. That's really meant to be for governments and public health agencies to step up, to prepare their infrastructure and to allow them to provide additional aid to where it needs to go. So it's really, that's really telling everybody to get ready for it, not that the average person needs to be worried about contracting it.
Kari, thank you so much. This is super, super helpful. Kari Debbink, Associate Professor in the Department of Molecular and Microbiology and Immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies.